It is Fantasy Life. Adam Ronis and Ian Hartitz here wrapping up hour number one as we break down the conference championships and also going to look at the Bills. Ian has an article up on fantasylife.com that you can check out right now that we'll touch on a little bit, looking at the Bills' needs for the offseason. And before we get into that, Ian, just want your thoughts on that Bills press conference this past week. It happened during our show, and we were kind of going over some of the quotes, just outraged at some of the things that were said. But what was your reaction to these Bills press conference with their owner and GM this week?
Just ridiculous, man, when you see these owners say stuff that just immediately gets disproven in under 30 minutes because Twitter does not forget. And some of these olds got to be remembering that when they're going out here and trying to trash certain guys. So, Keon Coleman, I will say, obviously has not worked out. If you want to call him a bust, you are very much in your right to do so. But it is weird. Like, is it just the whole Cam Newton funny cookies thing? Like, why is he getting so much more hate than someone like literally Xavier Legette going one pick ahead of him? I mean, there have been worse busts, man. It's not like Keon Coleman went out there this year and had 100 yards and 0 touchdowns. I mean, didn't do much after week one, so I'm not going to sit here and go super far out of my way to defend the guy. But just, all right, even removing Keon Coleman from the equation, all right, that was not a good draft pick. We can all agree on that. Here are the wide receivers that the Bills have signed since 2024 when they decided that trading Stephon Diggs away was a good idea. Josh Palmer, Curtis Samuel, Brandon Cooks, Gabe Davis, Elijah Moore, Mack Hollins, Mecole Hardman, Tyrell Shavers, Laviska Shenault, Quintez Cephas, Chase Claypool, and if your ears aren't bleeding yet, we got Marquez Valdes-Scantling, KJ Hamler, and Jalen Virgil as well. So it's been cute with the Bills going, oh, everybody eats without Stephon Diggs and all this, but I don't know, man. It seems like more often than not, everybody eats is just code for please save us again, Josh Allen or James Cook. So again, Keon hasn't worked out, but let's face it, man, whether you thought that Brandon Cooks catch should have been a catch or not, like if you went back to Bills Mafia faithful in August and said, hey, by the way, your season is going to ride on whether or not 32-year-old Brandon Cooks can come down with a concussed deep ball, in Denver, like I don't like those odds, Adam.
Yeah, and Mecole Hardman is going to play a role for you too. Is that really, like, there's obviously many needs, but is that the biggest need, is getting that go-to wide receiver? I mean, again, Allen still had success. He did turn it over a lot. You got to put some of that on him during that game, especially that turnover late in the first half that gave them 3 points. But is that one of the biggest needs, getting a reliable wide receiver for Josh Allen?
100%. And, it's one of those things where, again, they have tried with Keon Coleman and some of these guys. It's kind of a similar sentiment to, I think, what Kansas City has done over the years. It's not like they've ignored the position. They just haven't done a really good job of filling it. And even, throwing some money at Josh Palmer and Curtis Samuel just hasn't worked out. But, yeah, man, again, James Cook, even Ty Johnson and Ray Davis, like they have a good backfield. And obviously the tight end room is looking good as well, with Kincaid coming off easily his best year, just wasn't exactly playing a full-time role out there. So on offense, it definitely is wide receiver. Their front seven also is a problem. Obviously, Denver didn't even really feel the need to try to run the football on them, but that really was the thorn in their side all season long. Ed Oliver being out for much of the season certainly didn't help matters, but man, Joey Bosa, DaQuan Jones, Larry Ogunjobi, Matt Milano, like all these guys are on the wrong side of 30 and also, are entering free agency. So great stat from Benjamin Solak over there at ESPN, one of my favorite, guys to read each and every week, where I believe they've only had two Pro Bowlers, I believe, since Brandon Beane's been drafting since 2018, and like they're James Cook and then Dawson Knox out of nowhere, which made you forget that dude even made the Pro Bowl back in the day. So again, got some, they're not bad defense, but hey, let's face it, Sean McDermott, like if there was something to kind of give him credit for, it was him keeping a quality defense, at least before they were facing some of the better quarterbacks in the playoffs. So I had a front seven, interior offensive line, and wide receiver as the three big needs. I get not going crazy at wide receiver because you do have Josh Allen, but just again, when you're bringing Brandon Cooks and Gabe Davis into the fold halfway through the season, like that's a pretty good sign. You need more help.
All right, real quick, what's your prediction for this weekend? Who wins?
I think the Seahawks take down the Rams, as scary as it is for me to say I'm backing Sam Darnold, and then I will also be taking the Patriots. Broncos cover, though.
All right, there we go. That's Ian Hartitz. Want to thank him. Always fun working with him. And coming up in hour two, I'll be joined by Matthew Freedman as we continue to look at the championship games here on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. Hour number two here on Fantasy Life. Adam Ronis along with Matthew Freedman, who joins me for hour number two as Kendall Valenzuela gets the day off, as dealing with some nerves as she gets ready for her Seahawks taking on the Rams this weekend in the NFC Championship. Matthew, thanks for joining us today for the entire hour. It's been a while. How you been?
I'm good. Yeah, great to be here. Great for Kendall to get the day off. She's researching medical science to see if there's some way she can donate her oblique to Sam Darnold, in some sort of non-invasive, microsurgery. I don't know if that's going to work, but man, I'm super excited for these games. And it's the great time of the year where we've got only the two games left. In theory, the four best teams, but certainly four of the six or eight best teams in the league left playing each other. I think we've got a lot of really intriguing dynamics in these games with, basically a third divisional game between the Rams and the Seahawks. And then you've got the Patriots, kind of quote unquote, seemingly coming out of nowhere and making the move from one year to this year. But then having just this, like gift of a path to the Super Bowl in front of them with playing sort of like non-starter caliber quarterbacks and then backup quarterbacks. But they've also looked good when they've played these teams, and then you've got Jarrett Stidham, coming off of the bench in the hashtag revenge game against the Patriots. It's just all of these things that, like you can probably overanalyze, but man, we're going to overanalyze it for the next hour because, it's football. What else do we have to talk about? But also, I think these are just going to be two great games.
Yeah, I think we all are hoping they are. And looking at the lines, too, it's expected to be. Obviously, the Patriots are 4.5-point road favorites due to the quarterback situation with Jarrett Stidham starting for Denver, making his first start of the season. Hasn't thrown a pass in the NFL since 2023. And then, of course, Seahawks home favorites 2.5 points against the Rams as they meet for the third time. So we'll start looking at the Denver game. So clearly, you're very excited for this game. Some people might not be as much because Bo Nix is out, but Jarrett Stidham, clearly Sean Payton, very high on him, one of his first free agent signings. So when you look at Denver with Jarrett Stidham at quarterback, how do you think they set it up for him to have success if they are to win this game with Stidham at quarterback?
So I think some of this has to do with what would the opinion be of Bo Nix, like the average person's opinion of Bo Nix. Like, Ronis, like, do you think Bo Nix is a good NFL quarterback? Because I think that impacts what you perceive as the drop off from Bo Nix to Stidham. I don't think, and I'll just say, I kind of had some sort of bias against Bo Nix entering this season. I don't think it was like, me just hating him out of nowhere. I was looking at the numbers of what he did as a rookie and thinking like, yeah, he was okay. He wasn't great. He was okay. And I feel like that's the same basic perception I have of him this year. I think he's close to an average league average quarterback. And I think a lot of the success that he has been because Sean Payton is a really good offensive schemer and play caller. So what does that mean for Jarrett Stidham? I think it means that the offense actually doesn't change all that much with Stidham at quarterback. And this is sort of like galaxy braining it a little bit, but Sean Payton, notorious NFL rule breaker, by the way, we'll just say that Sean Payton had the chance to kind of pull a fast one on the Patriots, and he opted not to, right? Like, it would have been very easy for him not to say on Sunday night, hey, Bo Nix is out for this game. It would have been easy for him not to really to say anything on Monday. It could have been like they just leak it of like, you know what, there might be some sort of, ankle issue with Bo Nix and we're looking into it. And it could have been until like Tuesday or Wednesday that there's actual firm news. Hey, Bo Nix is definitely out for this game. And that staff for the Broncos could have had a day to 3 days extra planning for Jarrett Stidham while the Patriots are planning for Bo Nix. All right. But Sean Payton opted not to do that. And you have to ask yourself why. And the answer is he doesn't think it matters, right? Like, either he just suddenly became very concerned with, the NFL rules and fair play, or he just thinks it doesn't really matter because the offense doesn't really change with Jarrett Stidham. Now, Stidham isn't quite the runner that Bo Nix is, and I don't want to look too much at what a dude was 10 years ago. But Jarrett Stidham literally was the number one dual threat quarterback in his recruitment class when he was entering college. Like, they will still be able to do the same bootlegs, the same quarterback designed runs. They will still be able to do a lot of the things with Bo Nix that or a lot of the things with Jarrett Stidham that they previously have done with Bo Nix. So I think the offense doesn't change really all that much. I think what might change is just them getting a little bit weird in terms of like jumbo packages, like a pass out of nowhere to the number 3 tight end or the fullback, or just kind of like little wrinkles like this that the Patriots might not be expecting. But in terms of the entire offense, I think it stays pretty much the same. And then I'll just say, I don't think the downgrade is all that big. I have this as a 3-point downgrade. And if you look at the look ahead line of what this was projected at last week, it was Broncos favored by 2.5 or 3. And you think about the Broncos last week and what they were favored by against the Bills, right? They were like, 1.5 to 2.5 point favorites. The Bills power rated, I will just say, most people had the Bills power rated ahead of the Patriots last week. So now you have this line moving to 4.5 favoring the Patriots. That is way too much of a move, considering that Sean Payton has an entire week to plan. Jarrett Stidham has been in the system for 3 years. I don't want to say, that what he did in the preseason is highly indicative of what we should expect, but he tore up the preseason, and that's at least better than a dude sucking in the preseason, right? So when he's been given opportunities, he's done well. He knows the system. I think that there's a very good chance that the Broncos actually win this game. The Patriots should be favored, but I don't think they should be favored by nearly as much as we see in the market.
You do bring up an interesting point, is they could have prolonged that because no one knew Nix was hurt, right? Yeah. Everyone was searching. They were like, when did this happen? He did his post-game interview, and then Peyton came back out to announce it. So they could have milked that and, given the Patriots something to think about, and they didn't. The one thing I will say with Bo Nix, they have become a little bit more pass-heavy since about week 12. Do you think that they scaled that back a little bit with Stidham at quarterback?
I honestly don't think so.
Okay.
What is the point of running against the Patriots? Their run defense with Milton Williams back, like now that they have Robert Spillane back, that run defense is the best part of the unit. So I would understand the idea of wanting to, maybe kind of quote unquote protect your backup quarterback by running the ball a little bit more, but it's not a great matchup for running the ball. And Sean Payton is a run averse play caller anyway. He really likes to lean more into the passing game. So I think they're probably going to continue to do that. And Jarrett Stidham, again, it's only a 4-game sample of starts that he has in the NFL, but in all of his starts, he's thrown the ball a decent amount. So I think they're just basically going to take the Bo Nix offense and implement it with Jarrett Stidham.
Yeah, and that's what we saw last week is they really didn't run the football, and Buffalo was susceptible against the run, and they just didn't. Harvey only had 6 carries for 20 yards. Jaleel McLaughlin only 4 carries, 20 yards. We did see Harvey in the passing game, though, 5 catches for 46 yards on 6 targets. We'll have to wait and see if J.K. Dobbins is going to play. Probably unlikely since he's missed some time and he just came back to practice, but we'll find out officially tomorrow. But so you would look at Harvey as the better back in this game compared to McLaughlin because of his role in the passing game?
Yes, absolutely. And I will also say that I do think there's a pretty good chance that we see the Broncos starting center return in this game as well. And so Alex Forsyth, who has been filling in as the backup center, he has an ankle injury, but he's been practicing this week on a limited basis. So I think at a minimum he's playing, but there's a decent chance that starting center Luke Wattenberg, who's been out on IR with a shoulder injury, that he returns. He's practiced in full Wednesday and Thursday. And, normally if guys have been out for a while, they're coming back from IR, they normally need a couple, maybe 2 or 3 full weeks of practice before they are activated off of IR. But I will say, if ever there's a time to rush back your starting center, it's the playoffs. It's the conference championship, especially when you have a backup quarterback. So I think Wattenberg plays, and I think that ends up being a situation where maybe the downgrade from Bo Nix to Jarrett Stidham is minimized even a little bit more.
All right, we'll continue to break this game down when we return. It is Fantasy Life here on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. If you call yourself a sports fan, you gotta have Xfinity. All the games all in one place. Here's what you get when you watch sports with Xfinity. Sports Zone. Every pro football game and over 1,000 college games. Highlights and alerts all in one place. Multi-view, being up to 4 stadiums at once. Xfinity Fan View, live scores, odds, and stats all in one place. Personalized to you. Enhanced 4K. Xfinity Enhanced 4K. Simply stunning. Voice remote. Just say football. Imagine all your football all in one place. Easy. Learn more at Xfinity.com. Restrictions apply. New residential customers only. Taxes and fees extra and subject to change. Adam Ronis and Matthew Freedman here on Fantasy Life, breaking down the conference championship games as we're looking at Denver and New England. And Drake May, obviously in the MVP conversation this year, and not great the last 2 weeks, but was able to get the wins. 5 sacks taken in each of the last 2 games, 2 fumbles against the Chargers, 4 against the Texans, and we know that the Broncos defense has put up some good stats this year. They have been a little susceptible, though, here over the last 6-7 weeks. We've seen some quarterbacks put numbers up against them. So how do you look at Drake May going up against this Denver defense?
Yeah, it's a good question. The left side of that offensive line for the Patriots, even though they have gotten back, some of their key guys there, those guys haven't really performed to the level that you would have wanted. And so I think of, Will Campbell and, Jared Wilson as rookies in the playoffs going against, I think, an all around, across the line, very strong defensive line. Jonathan Cooper and Nick Bonito on the edges, John Franklin Myers and Zach Allen. All of those guys are able to get pressure. And so that, to me, is really the key matchup. Are those guys going to be able to exploit 2 rookies playing at left tackle and left guard, and then a quarterback in Drake May who has, played fantastic at times, but has a habit of taking sacks and fumbling the ball. I think that this line, in terms of like the matchup of Pat's offense against Broncos defense, is pretty even. One thing I will say is that looking at the secondary for the Broncos, I am not sure exactly where Drake May is going to be able to get his aerial production. I think the Broncos defense, it's not, to me, not in the same tier as the Seahawks, not in the same tier as the Texans. And the Texans defense did, I think, really well last week against the Patriots offense. So maybe the Patriots offense is able to do a little bit better, but I don't think the passing game is really going to be where it comes. Like Kayshon Boutte and maybe Mack Hollins returning, although I'm skeptical he even returns, but Kayshon Boutte going up against, one of the best cornerbacks in the league. Like I don't see him winning that matchup against Pat Surtain. And, Jaquan McMillan, maybe he's not like the best nickel in the league, but he's pretty good. And him going against Stephon Diggs, Stephon Diggs, he's fine, but he's still like 33 years old at this point. If Stephon Diggs out of the slot is your main weapon, I don't think it's going to work out all that well. So I still think that the edge here probably goes to the defense for the Broncos, and especially playing at home, in a AFC championship game. I think it's just going to be very loud. It's going to be an environment unlike anything that Drake May has seen before.
Which would lead you to believe they might rely a little bit more on the run. And we know Travion Henderson, it was a slow start to the season. Then he got his opportunity, had some games, but he struggled here in the playoffs. Ramondre Stevenson is averaging 4.7 yards per carry, even getting it done in the passing game with 7 catches for 86 yards. And, you look last week at the splits and you're like, oh, it was kind of even. But you got to remember, Stevenson left that game for a period due to an eye injury. He had 20 touches in the game. Henderson had 13. So do you see them going more with the veteran and Stevenson here in this game? We know Henderson pass protection is a little bit of an issue, which is why sometimes he's off the field a little less. But is this a game where you're going to trust Stevenson more than Henderson if you're looking at DFS or, guillotines or any type of playoff format?
Absolutely. I mean, I think both of them, if the Patriots win this game, and I will say, to this point, in my analysis, I have been very pro Broncos and my projections point that way, but I'm nothing if not humble. Like the market is saying that the Patriots should win this game, right? And if the Patriots are to win this game, you look at the matchup and you look at the way that the game state would probably unfold, we should see a pretty decent amount of production going to the Patriots backfield. And so Ramondre Stevenson I prefer, but certainly you still have the home run hitting ability with the rookie and Travion Henderson. And so I think both of them could end up having pretty good days. And thinking about the guillotines that you mentioned specifically, which I say one of my favorite fantasy games, the guillotines. This is one of the few teams left, not to say few teams. This is the only team left in the Patriots to where you could really stack both running backs and get production there. And so from that perspective, knowing that in this game, the running back position thins out really quickly. Yeah, stacking with the Patriots backfield is a optimal approach.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge this week, unless you had a lot of holdovers from last week in the guillotines to put together a very formidable lineup. And you can still draft too if you want to do that. So you can head over to guillotineleagues.com if you want to jump in a last-minute draft. It's a lot of fun, a lot of strategy, and if you've never tried it before, now's the time. It'll give you a taste, then you're going to want to get in one next season over an 18-game schedule. It's definitely a lot of fun. All I know is anyone who's never done it, and they try it because I introduced some of my friends to it, once you do it, you go back to it, right? I don't think there's no denying it, right, Matthew?
Yeah, absolutely. It is the 18-game format, my favorite. A lot of great season long games that people can play. But, I did it with some buddies this past year and, people enjoy, hey, I don't need to focus too much on, this matchup versus that matchup early in the season. I just need not to finish last. And then they enjoy each week the waiver wire, being able to go get someone like Christian McCaffrey on waivers or Jamar Chase, right? Like that's an amazing thing. And just in terms of the fab dynamic and, oh, do I bid $500 on this guy? Like you never have something like that in the regular season. So I think it is an amazing game and a way of playing fantasy.
Yeah, every week Kendall and I would go over like the most top chop players and try and figure out how much money to spend. And I think as you get more experience with it, you get better. I think it's any fantasy game. Sometimes people jump into an auction for the first time. I always say, because for me, I don't know about you, to me, auction is probably one of the most difficult formats to give advice because you can't spoon feed people. You don't know until you're in that draft room, until you experience what's going around you, especially in person. I mean, I think the in-person obviously is more fun. There's some good software where you can do auctions online, but it's a different dynamic. You're in a room, you could read people, you could hear their voices, but you can write the most elaborate article breaking down everything for an auction. It doesn't matter. Once you're in, you have to experience it and see how the bidding goes because you don't have any time to decide. You have seconds to decide, am I going to go up another dollar? Do I jump in $2 to $3? Because that can freeze people. So like anything in life, but especially with these new formats, I think you have to experience it to really grasp it.
Yeah. I mean, look, we live in the United States. It's a capitalist country. The free market is the greatest invention ever. And I would say like auction is like the purest form of the market as applied to fantasy football. And so like in that regard, like it's an amazing thing. I have so much respect for the guys who do that kind of like hardcore analysis and like that's their preferred way of playing the game. I will say I don't like auction as much because it's harder, right? And because it's harder to plan for. It takes so much time. But if you're doing a league with like your buddies, guys you've been in leagues with for like 20 years, auction can be like the funnest way of playing fantasy because you've been doing this league with them for years, and you all know the way that each other tends to bid. And so like, yeah, I think it's a really cool way of playing. It's just not my preferred way because it's like, man, an auction draft that can take so long.
Oh, you think it takes long for football? I do fantasy baseball. So imagine
Oh
how long
man.
those auctions take.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2.5. Well, my home league usually takes, we do it online. That one takes about 4 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's not forever. I think a football one in person, you might be able to get done an hour and a half with a good group. So, or maybe 2 hours. I think you can. With a good group, that's pretty
A good
quick.
group.
Yeah,
That's
if you
the
have
key.
you need an auctioneer that,
Yeah.
keeps the pace going. That's the key. Not someone who's going to sit there and wait. He's got to keep it moving. So, yeah, there's definitely different formats to play. It just feels like the auction for football is just, I don't feel it's ever going to become very popular because I think fantasy football for a lot of people, remember, there's office leagues, there's friends, they want it simplified. I don't think they want it that complex, and I think that's why it doesn't catch on. Same with IDP leagues as well. Like, I don't think they're ever going to become really popular.
I think you're right. And I will say, that's why it's great to have a buffet, right? To have like the full offering for people who like getting their fantasy in different types of ways, right? I'd say like there's no right way or wrong way to get fantasy, to play fantasy. It's all like about what you like and what your league mates like. And, and I say this with the utmost respect, like the hardcore degenerates, they might really want auction leagues, and like that's awesome. Like go 100% into like that hardcore degeneracy. Like I fully respect it. Just not it's not for me.
Yeah, no, I always say that because in the past I'd be like, wow, you playing an 8-team league or a 10-team league, and you know what? It's about you, whatever you enjoy, and just play in that format. And like we said, there's a lot of options and now guillotine leagues on the table as well. So if you haven't done it, check it out. One quick thing with the Broncos too before we move on to Rams Seahawks. So, Pat Bryant had the concussion. He practiced in full yesterday. We'll see if he goes. Troy Franklin was limited with the hamstring. It seems like every time Marvin Mims gets an opportunity, he produces. He had the big touchdown catch last week, 8 targets, 8 for 93 for a touchdown with those 2 receivers going down. But it seems like we can just never get it consistently. He was a guy last year late in the year. I was all over his props. They had it too low and cashed. I haven't really done much with him this year, but if those receivers are out, can we count on him again? Or it's just, is it too much of a wild card because we just don't know what the usage is going to be?
Man, this is a great question. In the offseason, I loved Marvin Mims. I was hardcore on Marvin Mims. Got way too much Marvin Mims exposure because part of it was just like what you said. Every time this guy gets opportunities, he ends up producing. He's an all-pro caliber return man. They give him the ball sometimes as a runner. And I also just kind of thought, hey, Cortland Sutton's kind of old. Not super impressed with him. Like there's opportunities within this offense for Mims to take a step forward. And it wasn't Mims, it was Troy Franklin, who, at least for the first chunk of the year, really ended up getting a lot of those opportunities. But now, it's like the siren song. Once again, it calls us Marvin Mims. Yeah, he was great last week. Is he going to get the opportunities? I lean towards yes, but I'm saying that as the person who has wanted Marvin Mims to get more opportunities for like the past year and a half. So I'm not the most objective of observers on this. I will fully own that. But should he get more opportunities? I think so.
Yeah, he'll be an interesting one because he might be out there on waivers and guillotines just because people are not sure if Franklin's going to play, Bryant's going to play. So that could be a wild card. As we saw last week with those 2 guys down, he was a big factor. And you have to think Cortland Sutton's going to see a lot of Christian Gonzalez too. So that could potentially open things up. Let's take a look at the Seahawks-Rams game. Seahawks at home favored by 2.5, total 46.5. And we saw last week and the last couple weeks, the Rams offense at times has just not looked as good as it did during the regular season. Matthew Stafford did not throw a touchdown pass last week. What do you attribute to the struggles last week against the Bears for this Rams offense?
Well, I mean, I think part of it was playing in the elements, and the Bears have a strong home field advantage anyway. And then we have the game model, the projections at Fantasy Life, and a lot of things go into the projections. And I want to talk a little bit about, what goes into home field advantage. So, some of it is, are you playing a team in your division? If not, your home field advantage is stronger. Like a team in your division plays at your stadium once a year, sometimes twice a year if you're playing each other in the playoffs, right? And so that team is just kind of more equipped to play on the road in your stadium. The team that you're playing against, do they play on the same surface? Right. That's also a big one. If you're a team that plays on grass and you're hosting a team that plays on turf, your home field advantage is amplified. Are you an outdoor team hosting an indoor team? And so last week, the Bears had all of the edges for home field advantage going against, like they're an outdoor team that plays on grass, hosting a non-divisional team that plays indoors on turf. And then there was the weather on top of that. So like their home field advantage was maximized. And then this is something that, I think it's hard for some people to kind of think about and to quantify. And so maybe they just say, well, it's hard for me to quantify this, so I'm not going to take it into account at all. But stuff like this ends up mattering. This was for the Bears, the second straight home game. For the Rams, it was the second straight road game. It was their fourth road game in 5 weeks, their sixth road game in 8 weeks. Like at some point, these things end up mattering. And so that spins forward to this week, where you have, for the second straight week in a row, you have the Seahawks playing at home, right? They're coming off of the bye the week before that. They have one extra day of rest relative to the Rams because they played on Saturday. The Rams played on Sunday. The Rams game went into overtime, and overtime teams playing the next week tend to have a little bit of a lag. And so now you're looking at the Rams playing their third straight road game, their fifth road game in 6 weeks, and their seventh road game in 9 weeks. Like these things end up mattering when they pile up like this. So in terms of kind of like the situational aspects of it, the Seahawks are in a really favorable spot.
Yeah, those are some good points. I didn't realize. I mean, obviously, I knew the playoffs, they were on the road, and I forgot that 2 of the last 3 to end the regular season were on the road. And then even that week 18, they might have had a chance to rest players, but they didn't because they still needed to win to get the higher seed, and they wound up playing their starters. So, yeah, that could take a toll. That's certainly something to consider when you look at the Rams. One thing that we did see last week, too, with the Rams is, they've been running a lot of 2 to 3 tight end sets. They went with a lot more 11 personnel last week. Do you think that was maybe a specific matchup, or how do you think they go about it this week going up against Seattle?
I'm glad you mentioned this because this was a weird thing for them, in my opinion, not to go more into that 3 tight end set. And some of it was maybe the return of Devontae Adams. And, so it's like, I can see that. But if we look at what these teams did on that Thursday night game in week 16, the Rams were like obscenely heavy with their personnel usage. They had 2 to 3 tight ends on the field almost all the time. And like they had success. They scored 37 points on the road against the Seahawks going with their heavy personnel packages. And some of it is, hey, maybe the Seahawks really just weren't prepared for it. But, with that jumbo package, they were able to run with quite a bit of success. And they were able to run specifically at Nick Emenwari, who is kind of like a chess piece within that Seattle defense, because he has the size to allow them to kind of play with their base defense, but to match up against heavy personnel. But he also has the coverage ability to be able to, play nickel. So he gives them a lot of versatility. But they were able to attack him specifically in the run game with their heavy personnel. And I would expect them to do that again. But the fact that they scaled back their heavy personnel so much last game makes me a little more uncertain. And it's just like, well, were they kind of trying to give the Bears a different look? Are they planning to go back? It's hard to know with McVay, but you know that they at least have that pitch in their arsenal.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out too. I mean, that last matchup, Seahawks Rams, there was no Devontae Adams, and there was no Tyler Higbee as well. You know, Higbee returns from IR since then. It was Colby Parkinson, Terrence Ferguson, and Davis Allen in that game, and they all played a role. Colby Parkinson, everyone was on that week. I remember because the previous week he had 2 touchdowns, and then all former teams. Seahawks are weaker against the tight end, and Parkinson 2 for 21 on 4 targets, as it usually goes in those situations when everyone's on a player. I think one of the factors, if you're back in Seattle, is Sam Darnold, right? We got to be real here. We saw him when he's under pressure. He's prone to turnovers, and we did see him turn it over 6 times in the 2 matchups against the Rams. He had that oblique issue last week where they didn't ask him to do much. It was pretty much over from the beginning of the game. Shaheed takes the kickoff return. They stop him on 4th and short, and it was pretty much over. Darnold only had 17 pass attempts. So how do you look at Darnold in this matchup? Can he help lead Seattle to victory?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're going to talk about Darnold, throughout the rest of the show. But I mean, that matchup, I will say, I am concerned. I talked about at the beginning of the show, Kendall Valenzuela, donating her oblique to Sam Darnold. I am concerned about that injury. I think more than your maybe average sports analyst or average sports fan. But I'll say I'm concerned.
All right, when we return, it's time for go hard or go home. Will these players go hard this week or will they go home? We'll break it down next. It is Fantasy Life on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Fantasy Life here on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Adam Ronis and Matthew Freedman breaking down the championship games. It's time now for Go Hard or Go Home, brought to you by the bold flavor of Mike's Hard Lemonade, the official drink of those who go hard for their league. And we're breaking down the players this week that are either going to go hard or go home. And we started off with Jarrett Stidham, and Matthew did a great breakdown to open the hour on Stidham. But we're still not sure exactly where he stands. So Stidham this week, Matthew, go hard or go home?
Yeah, I'm going hard on Jarrett Stidham. I think we see the Broncos in the Super Bowl. I think Stidham, I'm not saying he, plays at like an MVP caliber level, maybe not even a Bo Nix level, but close enough. And I think he outperforms expectations. I am going hard on Jarrett Stidham.
If you were in a guillotine and you had a choice between Stidham or Darnold, because obviously May and Stafford are going to be the top 2. And if you're that third team, you're probably deciding between Stidham or Darnold. Which one would you go with?
I would wait, and I would take Jarrett Stidham in the 8th round.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That's the thing. I've talked about this in like the waiver wire article. If you're that third team, 2 teams have a quarterback. Yeah, you can wait till the last round. It's simple. There's no bench spots, so just wait. The same thing whether you're bidding too, which occurred earlier in the week, and we talked about that. Ramondre Stevenson, who's looked good here in the postseason, even in the passing game. A lot of people kind of bypassed Stevenson, wanted Travion Henderson to be the guy, but we've seen Stevenson really do well here in the postseason. So will he go hard or go home against Denver this week?
Yeah, I'm on the go hard train with Ramondre Stevenson. I think that he's shown enough throughout his career, and then also recently, really to have that locked in lead back role. 200 yards of scrimmage production is what we've seen out of him in the 2 games of the postseason. 20 opportunities is what he had last week, even though he exited the game for a little bit with injury. I think right now he really is the primary weapon in that offense.
Yeah, he certainly has looked good, and I expect him to play another big role this week as well. Davante Adams. Ian Hartitz said he hasn't scored a touchdown in 54 days. He has not scored in 4 straight games. Last week, just 6 targets, 2 catches for 24 yards. The first playoff game against Carolina did have 13 targets, 5 catches for 72 yards. Did face Seattle only once this year. He missed the second game. First game against Seattle, he had 8 targets, 1 catch for 1 yard, and a touchdown. So does it get better this week? Davante Adams, go hard or go home?
I mean, I think it gets better in that he has more than one catch for 1 yard on 8 targets. But I think this is a sort of go home situation. I'm going to sort of try to split the difference a little bit by saying, like, I think he scores a touchdown just like he did in that one game, but it was, on 1 yard and 1 catch. I think he scores a touchdown in this game. A really tough run defense is what you see in the Seahawks. I think near the goal line, the Rams will be motivated to throw the ball. Devontae Adams, one of the best goal line wide receivers in the league. I think he ends up having a touchdown, but I don't think he really does much on a per target basis in this game.
Stephon Diggs, who's had 43 yards receiving or fewer in the last 3 games. Now, he did come through with that great touchdown catch, amazing hands on that play in the end zone to score the touchdown, but we just haven't seen big numbers from him the last few games. Does he go hard or go home this weekend against Denver?
I think he goes home. I think he ends up being the guy who still in the pass game probably gets the most opportunities, but still a tough matchup going against Jaquan McMillan in the slot. So I think he gets opportunities, but I don't think he really makes the most of them. So I'm saying he goes home.
Oh, his teammate, Kayshon Boutte, who has made some big plays here in the postseason, had a touchdown last week, 3 catches for 75 yards on 5 targets against the Chargers, 4 for 66. We did bring up that Mack Hollins potentially could be back, so that could impact the routes run for him. But Kayshon Boutte, go hard or go home?
I'm saying he doesn't even get off the bus. Like
Ooh.
he's living at home at this point. He's going to be shadowed, I think, for most of this game by Pat Surtain, who I think, if he's not the best cornerback in the league, is certainly top 3. And I don't think that the Patriots offense is going to be all that motivated to throw the ball anyway. I think how you attack the Broncos defense is with the running game. And so when they are throwing the ball, I think it's not really going to Kayshon Boutte, and I don't think they're going to be throwing the ball all that much to begin with.
RJ Harvey has not been as great as many had hoped when he's taken over this backfield. We saw Denver really didn't go to the run game last week, just 6 carries for 20 yards for Harvey. The 3 games to end the regular season, 50 rushing yards or fewer. Has become a little bit more involved in a passing game. I thought we would see it more when he first took over, when J.K. Dobbins went down, and we'll see if J.K. Dobbins plays. He's back at practice, but unlikely. We'll wait for the official word, though, likely tomorrow. But we have seen Harvey a little bit more involved in a passing game over the last few weeks. 5 catches, 46 yards on 6 targets last week. So RJ Harvey, go hard or go home?
I'm going hard. I don't think he's going to get a ton of work in the running game, but I think he's going to get work as a receiver. And I do think the Patriots off-ball linebackers, Robert Spillane and Christian Ellis, I think they're kind of more of your traditional thumper kind of linebackers. Like, I think they can be exposed in coverage. And so the idea of, kind of scheming some easy completions for your backup quarterback to your running back against guys that he can pull away from, I think that's something we're going to see from Sean Payton this week.
Sam Darnold has been a guy that Seattle has not really asked to do a lot. They've had some games where they won pretty easily and he throws 25 to 30 pass attempts, but the 2 games against the Rams were competitive, and 2 of his 3 highest pass attempts this year came against the Rams. That first matchup where they had the ball almost the entire game, he had 44 pass attempts. He did turn it over 4 times in that game. But that second game, the Rams had the ball a lot more, went to overtime. He had 34 pass attempts. So Sam Darnold, go hard or go home?
I'm saying go home with Sam Darnold. I think even if the Seahawks win this game, and my projections do point more towards the Seahawks, even if they win this game, it's not a big Sam Darnold game. Given the turnovers that he's had, I think it's just not a situation where the Seahawks really want Sam Darnold dropping back 45, 50 times to win them this game.
Yeah, 6 interceptions in the 2 games, and yet somehow both games are relatively competitive. 2 really different games, too.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how the third one pans out this week. Really looking forward to that one. And that wraps up this week's Go Hard or Go Home, brought to you by Mike's Hard Lemonade. Because playing it safe is how you end up watching the playoffs from the couch. When we return, we'll wrap it up. We'll look at some potential bets for the weekend. It is Fantasy Life here on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Adam Ronis and Matthew Freedman here, and someone tweeted me earlier. They said, wow, Ronis, you don't even control the music even when Kendall's not there. And that song just says it. Yeah, I have no control over the music today because that would not be on my playlist. Thank you, Ani, for just continuing the thing with Kendall not here. We appreciate that. I don't know, Matthew, that's you were bobbing your head, but I don't think you're listening to that at home, right?
Absolutely not. Look, I will just say, at least we don't have Taylor Swift anymore as my walk-up music, because for a solid football season, that was what we had.
That is brutal. I hear enough Taylor Swift during the show. Most of the time, I don't realize who it is. I guess now that it's been ingrained in my mind and has played so much that I'm starting to get it, which is not good. I'd rather not. But yeah, I don't control the music today. I did hear hip hop in one of the segments, but not much. But stay tuned. Coming up after us, it's RotoWire Fantasy Sports Today with Joe Bartel and Alan Seslowski. They'll be with you from 12 to 2 p.m. Eastern, then from 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern, Elite Sports with Jeff Manns and Ted Schuster. Fantasy Footballers from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern, then Fantasy Alarm with Howard Bender and Andrew Cooper from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, and then 8 to 10 Football Diehards with Mike Dempsey and Bob Harris. So, Matthew, I know you're big into the betting scene like me, so just curious if you have anything that stands out. I know it's only 2 games. It's kind of tough at this point, but is there anything that catches your eye that you've either bet on or you're looking to bet?
Yeah, so, given the analysis I had near the top of the show, I'm on the Broncos pretty strongly in this spot. I think this game should be very close to a pick 'em. And that's definitely not what we are seeing with this line at 4.5 favoring the Patriots. So, Broncos as underdogs at home. Sean Payton has been just lights out throughout his career as an underdog of more than a field goal. And also, Sean Payton, pretty good with backup caliber quarterbacks throughout his career against the spread. Whether it was Jameis Winston with the Saints or Taysom Hill, Teddy Bridgewater, Sean Payton had success against the spread with backup quarterbacks. So I'm still very much on the Broncos in this spot. I think the downgrade from Bo Nix to Jarrett Stidham is not nearly as great as what the market has indicated. And then I want your thoughts on this one. The Seahawks, my projections lean towards the Seahawks. I talked earlier about the significant advantage that they have in terms of rest and not traveling, and the really big disadvantage that the Rams have as their 3rd straight road game, their 5th road game in 6 weeks, their 7th road game in 9 weeks. That stuff adds up. It has a cumulative impact. But then you just kind of take out all of that and you say, in the Rams, you have the better quarterback. You have the better offensive line. You have, and this is no disrespect to Kubiak, but you have the more established, proven offensive schemer and play caller in Sean McVay. And on the road, not all that long ago, they were able to go into Seattle and score 37 points against the best defense in the league. You just kind of put that all together, and it's like, man, do I really want to bet against the Rams? And so I do have a bet on the Seahawks. My projections do point in that way. I think they probably win this game by more than a field goal or more. But I will say there is that thing that just makes me unnervous about, do I really want to be betting American dollars on Sam Darnold, who's dealing with an oblique injury and might have literally a 4th string left tackle? Because Charles Cross, the team is quote unquote optimistic that he's playing, which, like, saying you're optimistic about a guy playing might as well be like the death sentence. It's like, okay, he's probably not playing, right? He hasn't practiced to this point this week. If he practices today, then, maybe, right? Well, I'll probably project him in, but he hasn't practiced yet. I'm projecting him out, and his 2 immediate backups have not practiced yet either. So there really could be hey, do I want to bet on Sam Darnold, who just tends to throw interceptions when pressured anyway? Do I want to bet on Sam Darnold dealing with an oblique injury? He didn't have to throw the ball all that much last week, but when he was throwing the ball, he was grimacing. Do I want to deal with him with a fourth string left tackle going against a top 8 defense? I don't know if I want to do that, but alas, I'm doing it.
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of points, which is probably why I'm leaning towards the Rams here. I mean, I did pick the Rams before the playoffs to get to the Super Bowl, so I will stick with it. But I think anyone that is on Seattle, you illustrated all the points, brought up the great point about all the road games for the Rams. I think when you're trying to back Seattle, the biggest question is Sam Darnold. Like, is he going to fold under pressure, turn it over in a critical spot? So I think anyone who's back in Seattle, I think that's it has to be their biggest concern, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, maybe this is a live betting game. Like you watch the first drive, see how Darnold looks, see how the left tackle looks. And if it looks like, hey, Darnold isn't injured, like he's able to play through this, maybe you live bet it.
All right, I want to thank Matthew and Ian Hartitz for joining me today. It was a great show. You can check out all our work, fantasylife.com. I'll be back Monday with a happy or sad Kendall right here on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio.